Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am the creative Contessa. Some of you know me as Rachel, and I will be working on repairing 15th century undergarments while I chat with you about recent learnings and discoveries vis-a-vis medieval history and specifically daily life and medieval material culture. So it has been a while, guys. It's been over a week, I know. We had some really bad news in the Creative Contessa community last week. One of our most beloved and most loyal and active members of the Creative Contessa community, Takeda, unfortunately passed away very unexpectedly in his sleep. And the news kind of set me back. It rocked me quite a bit, in not a good way. And I just couldn't find the energy to actually do any live streaming. So yeah, sorry about that, everyone, but we're back now. So I'm going to be making absolutely essential repairs to some medieval undergarments, 15th century Italian undergarments, camicia in this case. And, I have been doing some very interesting reading. Some very fascinating discoveries have come my way since we last talked. One, have you all heard of sea silk? Also, if you're out there, please let me know if you can actually hear me. I know I'm not wearing medieval clothes today. I apologize for that, but I just finished a live stream on my travels with the Creative Contessa channel, so I'm not wearing medieval clothes for that reason. Although I probably would have gotten more views if I had been wearing medieval clothes. I'll have to try that next time and see what that inspires for, if that triggers the algorithm better than the unfortunately low view count that we had. Yeah. Yes, so any news where to send condolences? So for Takeda's family, a GoFundMe has been set up. I posted that as a pinned comment, but I'll publish it more generally. A GoFundMe has been set up to help support his widow and his daughter, because he was the primary breadwinner, and so his passing has left them in a bit of a financial situation. So I will set up the GoFundMe. Yeah, that's what they need right now. They need community support more than they need flowers or anything like that. So I will post that up. I don't have an address for. I haven't heard of any funeral arrangements. I should reach out to Mara again and find out. She obviously probably was simply overwhelmed by everything that was happening. His death was very unexpected. Apparently, he'd been experiencing shortness of breath for several days, and he ignored it. So, yeah, that's very unfortunate. Anyway, back to some of my research. So how many of you have heard of sea silk? Sea silk. I've heard of it, but I've learned a whole lot more about it because this exciting news has come out of South Korea, where I currently am, actually. Welcome to Daegu, South Korea. Material researchers here have ascertained the method of making byssus, sea silk. What is sea silk? Sea silk is a fabric that is very silk-like in its properties, animal protein based, like silk, standard silk is. And it comes from this fiber that a specific kind of mollusk produces, the Pineus nobilis, which is this kind of like clam-like mollusk, and it produces this fiber to attach itself to rocks in the water. And the fibers can be harvested and through a laborious process can be spun and woven into the most amazing silk fabric you can imagine. This sea silk has been being produced for literally over 2,000 years at this point. Unfortunately, as of 2017, there was apparently only one woman left in the world who actually knew how to do it in Sardinia. And in the interview I read with her on BBC back in 2017, she was not planning to share it with anyone except for her daughter, because apparently for generations it has been passed down in the matrilineal line of her family from mother to daughter, from grandmother to granddaughter. and she has decided that she will continue that tradition or that it will die with her. She was not interested in taking an apprentice who wasn't a member of her family. And yeah. So that was 2017. I haven't looked in to see if she has stopped making it or if something else had happened to her. She wasn't that old. She was about 60 in 2017. But apparently, South Korean researchers have figured out how to make sea silk. And that it's a very complex process because you have to harvest the byssus, which is the fibers that grow off of this mollusk, and then they have to be treated with an acid, and then they have to be further processed by soaking them in a solution of a variety of sea algae. And the acid and the sea algae make them elastic, make the fibers elastic, and allow them to be spun and then woven. And apparently the secret the chemistry secret to do that was held by basically this one last living woman. Thankfully, the Korean researchers have cracked the code, and so now it looks like we might be able to take what is now marine waste, because these mollusks are still eaten, and the fibers are just tossed away along with the shells generally. And so now they figured a way to use the waste, the byssus, to actually make sea silk. How cool is that? So sea silk is super fine, it's super strong, it's very rare, and it lasts forever. And one of the magical things about it is that it is naturally golden in color. And it's not golden because of dye stuffs or dye compounds contained within the fibers. It's golden because the protein structure, like a crystal, has a specific structure that makes it reflect gold. And there's the proteins are called photonin. It has photonins, and these photonins are aligned in such a way that it looks gold to the eye. And so it's a gold that will last forever as long as the protein structure is intact. And it really looks golden, like golden fleece golden. And I've read some theories that say that the golden fleece wasn't actually a fleece, that it's actually a reference to byssus, to sea silk. And it weaves up so finely, it spins and weaves up so finely that a pair of 19th century gloves made of sea silk was supposedly able to be folded down and fit inside of half of a walnut shell. How cool is that? So it looks like we're going to be able to actually recreate this amazing silk now. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Husafa, lovely to see you again. Question, do I use a thimble? I do not. Should I use a thimble? Maybe. I like the dexterity. I don't sew anything dense enough, at least normally. I'm not sewing something that's dense enough to really require a thimble to protect my finger from pushing on the needle. If I were to, say, be sewing canvas, multiple layers of canvas or multiple heavy layers of fabric, I would probably use a thimble. But generally, I really prefer the dexterity that is provided by not using a thimble. So, no, I generally don't use a thimble. Yeah. Yeah, so sea silk, back to sea silk. So it looks like we'll be able to actually make sea silk again. Now, what I didn't read in the article, I didn't see whether they would be able to mass produce it or whether it would still have to be a handcraft. Historically, sea silk was fabric reserved for kings and emperors and popes, literally. It was not something that just anyone could have. And there is an extant vestment from 13th century France made of sea silk. And it is still just as golden as the day it was made. It is stunning. It is stunningly beautiful in color. And it really is so durable. So I just was so excited by that prospect. So those just welcome to my medieval sewing party. I know I'm not dressed very medievally today, but I was out and about, and I just finished doing a travel live stream on my Travels with the Creative Contessa channel where we discussed cruising and how cruise news and how to best enjoy your cruise and not have it turn into a disaster. So I just transitioned from that straight into my medieval stuff channel. Normally, of course, I am dressed up like a medieval lady, but right now I'm just kind of wearing my modern hanbok, a cholik style dress. And I'm just doing repairs on my camicia. A camicia is an undergarment worn by men and women in medieval Italy. The word camicia just means shirt, but really it would best be translated modernly as an undershirt, because this was absolutely a garment that was worn against your skin. This is the garment that protected your overgarments in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, and actually up until the modern era, from the disgustingness of your skin, and kept your clothes clean and from developing foul smells and stains. And it also takes a lot of the wear and tear of moving and living, and so it constantly needs repairs. It's like a car. Medieval undergarments are like cars. They need constant maintenance. So what I've done here is, I'll show you. At this corner there was a big rip. You can still kind of see I haven't fixed it on this side yet. Big rip. Right? And so, on both corners, because the corners are the weakest point. And so I have attached on the inside a band that actually goes over the inside all the way across this corner, so that now there's a solid piece of fabric and not a joint where it can rip. So I'm completely reinforcing this corner with a separate panel of linen that will probably take this through to the end of its life, hopefully, or until the patch wears away. Hey Sarah, I know, it's good to be back. I apologize everyone. It's, the Takeda's death really kind of took my breath away, metaphorically and literally, and I just haven't been feeling it. Feeling it a little bit today, so we'll see how long we live stream. But tomorrow, I've got an exciting live stream planned for you all. Medieval cooking, but not a cooking demonstration. One of my followers and friends, long distance friends, got access to a 16th century Transylvanian cookbook that was written for a Transylvanian prince, and she recreated a feast using recipes from it. And so I'm going to interview her tomorrow, and we're going to chat about medieval food. She's going to talk about her experiences reading through this translation of this cookbook, about the things she learned about medieval Transylvanian cuisine versus modern cuisine, especially because she's in Alberta, so she's in kind of non-coastal Canada. So there's certain expectations about what food should be like there. She's going to talk about how she accommodated those modern tastes while still trying to be faithful to the original material, and about the recipes that she made. So you're going to be learning about 16th century Transylvanian cuisine tomorrow. So very exciting. Join in for that. I will, of course, be chiming in with my own knowledge of cuisine from the Middle Ages through the Renaissance, and we're going to do a comparison about techniques she encountered in these recipes versus the similar or different techniques that I've encountered in Western Europe. So it's going to be East meets West, East Europe meets West Europe, 16th century style. Yeah, so stay tuned, tune in for that. And of course, if you have any medieval food questions, bring them and ask them, and we will be happy to answer them there. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting live stream. I'm excited to have Katie on, because she was cooking for an event of the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is not a medieval reenactment group at all. It's a medieval recreationist group that has sometimes living history components, but they've developed sort of their own feasting culture, they've developed their own hierarchy, and they've developed their own kinds of expectations about what food should be like. And so Katie was trying to balance the organizational culture versus this original Transylvanian culture. And she was sometimes pleasantly surprised at what she discovered in, researching these Transylvanian recipes, and other times she was really disappointed at what she didn't find and the things she therefore had to sacrifice in order to stay true to the original. Did they have brass or bronze cookware in the 15th century? Husafel, absolutely, all across Europe, and I mean, even in Korea in the 15th century. But brassware and bronzeware was generally luxury, right? So the cookware that everyone could afford was ceramic, was pottery. That was the, I don't know what would be the modern cheap cookware equivalent. That was That was the aluminum, I guess, the aluminum cookware of the. It's funny, aluminum used to be a super luxury item that very few people had because it was so hard to produce in the pre-industrial revolution world. But yeah, ceramics are what everyone had. You know, ceramic cooking pots, ceramic sieves, ceramic colanders, ceramic baking dishes, ceramic mixing bowls. Everyone could have ceramics, right? The next level up would be some kind of metal, metal alloy, Latin, something like that. And then, you know, you've got bronze and brass and then iron. So, you know, that level of cookware would have definitely been on the more upper end of the socioeconomic spectrum to have metal cooking pots like that. Yep. So, great question. 16th century Transylvanian food. Wonder how close to Turkish or Ottoman cuisine. So, what I have seen, at least compared to modern Turkish cuisine, not so much. It definitely has still very medieval overtones of spice, lots of spice blends, and sweet and sour and savory, right? So, but comparing it to historic Ottoman cuisine, I bet you would find a lot of similarities. But it's the same with a lot of 16th century cuisine, right? 16th century Persian cuisine. If you're looking at just the stews, are very similar to the kinds of stews that are being made in 16th century Italy. So, you know, there seems to be, and we're talking upper end of the socioeconomic spectrum. We're not talking the average farmer. We're talking people who could afford to have cookbooks written in their honor. So, you know, you always have to clarify that. Sarah, February, are you okay? There's an omega and then some random letters after you're in that comment. I'm not certain what that is. I don't think I've ever seen an omega typed up before, by the way, in a comment. That's interesting to see the letter omega as a typed character. Yeah. Let me see. I love your hair down. Oh, hi, Irish Rose. Thank you. I've learned a lot from watching you. Thank you for your mixing. Hi, Irish Rose. Yeah, well, since I'm not dressed medievally, I can actually leave my hair down because I just did I did a live stream. For those who don't know, I have a travel channel, Travels with the Creative Contessa. And I just did a live stream talking about cruising, cruise craziness, cruise news, and also tips and tricks for not having a completely failed cruise. So for that, hence why I'm dressed like this, in completely modern clothing instead of historic clothing. And I just decided to just transition straight into a medieval sewing party while I'm here. I'm here at the historic Starbucks. You can see that this is actually a Starbucks that's been built in the historic fashion. So it's actually a timber frame building built by hand by extremely skilled labor. Wattle and daub filling between the timber frames, and they've built this beautiful Starbucks complex here in the historic downtown of Daegu. And I love to come here and do medieval sewing parties because it has just such a wonderful atmosphere. And they've got the back porch here with floor sitting and this beautiful stand of bamboo. Isn't that lovely? And you can hear, I don't know if you can hear the gentle rustling of the breeze through the bamboo. It's just a very peaceful, beautiful space. And you would never know that you're in the center of a city of 3 or 4 million people. And you can hear birds singing happily. It's a lovely space, so I really enjoy this. I don't see a Starbucks. No, you don't, right? They are not a channel sponsor. This is not product placement, but just to prove it. But here's one of the things I love about this Starbucks. They have lots of localized Korean things on their menu. So it's not most of the things on this menu you can't get in the US. So for instance, check out this beautiful pyramid bag of green tea from Jeju Island. Organic, and it is super high quality. It's big, huge chunks, and it's still, I can get a couple more cups of tea out of this. And you get 2 of them, 2 of those bags with 1 cup of tea here. And it makes the most beautiful green tea you can imagine. It tastes so delicious. And they now have this Injolmi rice coffee cream, Injolmi rice cream coffee beverage. Injolmi are the chewy Korean rice cakes, and then they've got a rice-based cream, you know, like rice milk, but rice cream that mixes into that. And then they've got this other very localized drink that uses rice as well. They really work hard here to make sure that Starbucks is not just a cookie cutter of every Starbucks in the U.S. So good stuff here. Yeah, I'm a big tea drinker. Big tea drinker. Yep. Oh, no, Richard Dugans. No, don't, no, I wasn't offended. Not offended at all. I'm just saying that, things, things, they, Starbucks can be actually a very nice place depending on where you are in the world. Is it honey and basil based green tea? No, this is Camellia sinensis, right? So this is Camellia sinensis. This is green tea, actual tea from the tea plant. So for those who don't know, anything that doesn't come from the tea plant is technically not tea. That's a tisane, right? That's an herbal infusion, right? Tea is technically supposed to be only the tea plant, Camellia sinensis, but in English there's been a lot of confusion. Actually, in most languages, there's been a lot of dissolution of that original meaning. But no, I mean definitely very specifically tea from the tea plant that is grown on the slopes of Halasan, of Mount Hala, this beautiful volcano that is also an entire island out on Jeju Island. Beautiful, beautiful place Jeju is. Yep. I forgot to drink my matcha tea today. Yeah. Do they drink a lot of coffee or tea coming from a lover or both? Oh goodness, yes. So originally Korea was a tea culture. Tea was introduced here by Buddhists, actually. Proper tea leaves tea, was introduced here by Buddhists in the 6th century, were the first tea plantations apparently. And tea came with Buddhism pretty much everywhere because Buddhism forbade the consumption of beverages that would lead to bad behavior, like spirits. And so in its place, they introduced tea leaves, tea plants, because, caffeine apparently doesn't inspire bad behavior. And so for centuries, Korea was a tea country. That was their hot beverage of choice. But then, the 20th century came, Western culture came, and I'm going to assume it was probably the Americans who introduced coffee after the Korean War. And coffee culture has really taken over here in the last 15 years. Massively taken over 15, 20 years. So there are coffee houses everywhere. It is way easier to get a really good cup of hand-roasted, hand-drip coffee here in Korea than it is to get a good cup of tea, sadly, because the coffee culture has just absolutely taken over. It's very trendy right now. There are more cafes on any given block than there probably are restaurants. It's really out of control. Happily, it seems that the tea culture may be making a comeback, so we are seeing an increase in traditional tea houses opening up that actually serve tea in a pot, on a tray with the proper cups and all the serving things. But when we first came to Korea, that was nowhere to be found in 2014. So right now, coffee culture is still very, very prominent, but the traditional tea culture does seem to be making a comeback. Yeah. Here in India, Darjeeling and Assam are tea states. Yep, absolutely, big time. Yep. Well, Richard, thank you for that compliment. I have been in love with history and learning about history since I was a little girl. And I love sharing. I've also always loved sharing my knowledge of history. So welcome to my Living History channel. The goal of this channel is to inspire an appreciation for historical cultures across the world and history across the world in a different way, right? In a more hands-on, material culture way, in a way that is relatable. Not just great man history, but daily life history. Hence why I'm working on repairs to a 15th century undergarment, 15th century Italian undergarment. Oh, Dinesh, man, I'm a huge tea lover. In fact, most people don't know tea. The consumption of tea originates apparently in Burma, in Myanmar. And the first tea was not steeped and consumed as a drink. It was eaten as a fermented food. Right, so in Myanmar, they actually fermented tea leaves and ate them first. And then that got exported into what is now China, apparently, and the Chinese figured out about actually steeping it in hot water and drinking it. And then it was back imported. The beverage tea as a beverage was back imported into Burma. So I thought that was fascinating. We're talking like 4,000 years ago, long time ago, long time ago. But that seems to be where the direction points. Yeah. Yeah, Googler, thank you. Welcome to the Creative Contessa. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, I left my snips at home. Okay, guys, I'm about to do something that you should never do. Don't do what it is, the thing I'm about to do. I don't have my snips here, so I'm going to use my teeth to cut this thread. Don't do it. Because if you use your teeth to cut your thread like that, you will eventually develop a groove in your teeth, eating through the enamel of your teeth, which will expose your teeth to bacteria and could lead to tooth decay. So don't do that. However, I have no other option right now. But use snips or scissors normally. Let me see. Irish Rose says, I have to have my 1 cup of coffee in the morning, but I'm truly a tea girl. I have developed a taste for coffee over the years. My first exposure to, my parents grew up drinking coffee, but I wasn't interested in that. When I moved to Spain, when I lived in Spain as a student, in Spain, coffee is very much a social drink. And so we would go out to a cafe to socialize, and of course, definitely no tea worth drinking at those cafes, because it was always just cheap tea sweepings in a not very great tea bag back then. So I started drinking coffee. The first coffee that I would drink was a manchada, which basically is more like coffee flavored hot milk. It's like this much coffee and this much hot milk. And then over time, I was able to whittle that down to less and less milk. And now I can enjoy a good espresso. But I don't I'm still a social coffee drinker. Like if I'm by myself, I won't drink it. If I'm at home, I won't drink it. First off, pain in the butt to make well. It's easier to make good tea. But two, it just feels like a social drink to me. So if I'm alone, it's just not something I'll drink. And in the morning, I don't need caffeine to start my day. I just kind of wake up ready to go. So, which is not a criticism to anyone who decides they need caffeine to start their day. No criticism whatsoever on my part. I get my morning energy from exercise. That's how I get my morning energy. A good hard workout first thing. Yeah, so Dinesh, thank you. If you guys are enjoying this and you like learning this way, then like and subscribe. And after this live stream, consider checking out my extensive library of content. I've got super informative shorts. I've got full-length, carefully edited and researched videos. And I will make you this promise. I will never, ever, ever use AI for my research, for my scripting, for my writing, for my film creation. That is all done by me and my team of my husband sometimes. I do all my own research. I only use primary sources. I never rely on secondary sources. And I believe in writing my own scripts, using my own brain and my own creativity. So if you are into that kind of content and you are into old school style research and content creation, then you are at the right place. I think that generative AI will be the downfall of human civilization and human creativity if we don't put a stop to its use. Yeah, I've said it. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that star, Johanna. Oh, Johanna, it's good to see you again. How are you doing, my dear? I hope you're having a nice, relaxing weekend that's full of self-care, right? We have to remember to take care of ourselves, right? And that's kind of also the reason I haven't been live streaming this week. I needed a break. But the break was mostly triggered by the death of my very good friend and one of my most loyal followers, Takeda. It's very sudden and unexpected. That was, Johanna, right after our live stream last week, I got news that Takeda had died in his sleep unexpectedly, probably heart failure. And it just rocked me. It just completely rocked me. So that's one of the reasons I haven't been on this week, guys. I apologize. Do I know when tea came to the West? Yes, the 17th century. So interestingly, tea actually arrived in Portugal, I think. I think it was Portugal first in the 16th century, and it was sent as a gift by some potentate from the East, from Asia. But the king who received it, and I don't remember which king it was, he looked at this pile of dead, dried leaves, is how he viewed it, and looked at it as garbage, and literally had it chucked into the harbor. I'm confident it was, in modern day terms, tens of thousands of dollars worth of tea that he, as a gift, that he just had chucked in the harbor. And then it's not until the 17th century that it gets reintroduced, and it spreads up to England. I think it's Caterina de Braganza, when she marries Charles II, right? I think she's the one who brings tea with her to England, and she's the one who introduces it and spreads its popularity, if I'm recalling correctly. My focus is usually on the medieval, so my modern history is a little less charted, but I'm pretty certain that that's what I remember reading about tea. Yeah. So but also the West is really. The West is a deceptive term, and it doesn't tell the whole story, of course, of the continent of Eurasia, because it is a continent. Europe and Asia are the same continent, guys. They're not separate continents, despite what some probably racist geographers from probably the Enlightenment want us to think. They are not. It is not a separate continent. It is one big continent, and there's a spectrum of culture there. There's a spectrum of peoples. There's a spectrum of ethnicities, and there isn't a sharp dividing line. And so tea comes to the West in two ways. It comes over sea and it comes over land. And whether the word tea in your respective language is tea with a T sound or ta with a CH sound tells us historically whether your tea came over land or over sea first, and then took root in that culture and that language. So for instance, Russia, it's chai, I think it's chai, but it's a chai-based word, right? In the Czech Republic, in Poland, but in Western Europe, it's in English it's tea, right? And so it's té in Spain and Portugal and Italy, right? So it all came by ship, because that tells you also when it arrived, because the region in China and Asia from which it came, whether the local dialect word for tea was cha or was té. So yeah, like fun with languages. What can we say? Ceramics action. Good to see you back. Steve, appreciate those condolences. Thank you. I miss Takeda a lot. Yep. Dash, I'm an encyclopedia. I don't know. I wish I'm fascinated by knowledge. I'm fascinated by learning, and I love sharing it. So I've always been that way. Oh, thank you, Dinesh. Life is worth smiling about for the most part. And even if in the moment life might not be worth about smiling, sometimes, literally studies have been done to show that if you force your face into a smile, the muscular reaction of doing that, even if it doesn't reach your eyes, it doesn't matter. It actually triggers either dopamine or serotonin. But it triggers a happy neurological response, basically, and it will actually then backfeed to make you feel happy. So, and actually Johanna's out there, she might actually be able to answer that. But, actually the act of physically smiling, even if you don't feel like smiling in the moment, can force happiness on you. How fascinating is that? The human body is amazing. Let me see. So what do we know what they drank before tea? Any hot beverages that you know of? Okay, so if we're talking Western Europe, when we're talking about beverages, like just to drink because you're thirsty versus medicinal or medical treatment, right? We have to distinguish between those two categories. So we know that water, a variety of fermented, but contrary to popular belief, they did drink water in the Middle Ages. They did. Not everywhere had contaminated water. In fact, in 14th century France, the place to get the cleanest water in the city was the River Seine. shocking as that may be. So they drank water, they drank a variety of fermented beverages that would then be diluted. Wine was consumed widely and was often diluted 2 to 1 to water, or 3 or 4 to 1 with water. So that very little wine, but lots of water, like basically like an uncarbonated Weinschorle. Small beer, small ale was consumed. Small beer or small ale are the second, is like the is like a second fermentation. It's more like a kombucha, like beer or ale kombucha in terms of the alcohol. And we do know, I have evidence of infusions being consumed for pleasure, but cold, not hot. So, for instance, in the Ménagier du Paris, the Goodman of Paris, this fantastic 1390s, 14th century manual on household management, this gentleman, the Goodman, is composing this manual for his teenage bride. And he knows that he is not going to live very much longer. He says this. And he hopes that she will make a second marriage that will make her very happy. And he wants her to have a successful second marriage, which I think is so touching. So he writes this massive manual for her with all kinds of tips and advice on how to successfully run a massive upper class household. And he provides not only tips on cleaning and servant management, not only recipes for food, how to manage a kitchen, what you'll need to host formal dinners for prominent members of Parisian society. He also talks about hosting guests. And in one of the tips about hosting, one of the instructions for hosting guests, is to have infused water on hand to serve your guests. And he provides several different recipes for infusions. And the infusions, there we're talking spices, we're talking herbs, and flower blossoms. So we do know that infused water was obviously a thing, at the very least in Paris. And if it's being done in Paris, there's no reason that same thing couldn't have been a practice elsewhere. And it just could be that we just don't have the same kind of evidence for other places, because the Goodman of Paris is a rare look into daily life in the Middle Ages, not just for the owners of the household, for the master and mistress of the household, but for their servants as well, for their family members, for their clients, the people who are their affiliates, right? So we just don't have, I haven't found that kind of source for other polities and other times in medieval Europe, but I bet if I did, it would probably also contain references to infused water. So infused water also seems to be a kind of beverage that was enjoyed. Hot beverages, not so much. Not that they would drink them hot, and that's probably because heating up water is a big deal. It's not just as easy as tossing on the electric kettle. So I suspect that's probably why hot beverages aren't more common, right? Let me see. Brief freeze. Are we back? Are we still frozen? Parth, thank you for joining me. Yeah, I did have some chai actually. My tea is already finished, unfortunately, and I don't have a way to make a second steeping with my wonderful Jeju green tea pyramid bags here. But I definitely would like some more tea. Yeah, and I do love spiced chai. I absolutely adore spiced chai. It is a tasty, delicious thing. So yeah, tea versus chai, land versus water arrival, correct? No, not frozen. Okay, great, fantastic. I can hear, I'm so glad I decided to sit on the back porch. I can hear the racket from inside this hall here. For those who are wondering, I'm actually at a Starbucks. And inside here is this beautiful interior floor seating space. It's gorgeous, but it is loud. And right now there's a whole lot of people there enjoying a midday beverage and snack of some kind, no doubt. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Parth. So for those just joining, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am not dressed medievally, some of you may have known. That's because I did a live stream on my travels with the Creative Contessa channel, which you might want to check out also, because my standard sense of humor and my encyclopedic knowledge translates over to that channel as well. And I just did a live stream about cruising and tips for cruising, and I came from that live stream and just sitting in the exact same spot, switched to my Creative Contessa channel, and so here we are. don't forget to double tap that screen and consider subscribing. hubby is sadly in Seattle and I am in Daegu, South Korea. So that might be a bit of a challenge. This is why I need ladies in waiting. This is why I always need a damsel to attend me. Oh goodness, yeah. So is anyone working on their own projects? And if you have questions about daily life in the Middle Ages, about food, about dancing, about music, about clothing, about how they did things, go ahead and pop them in the live chat. I have spent most of my life researching into daily life in the Middle Ages and recreating it, doing living history, attending events where, you know, we do things in a medieval fashion. We eat the food, we dance the dances, we have live music, we do the handcrafts. I do a lot of different handcrafts, medieval to modern, and a lot of different arts. Here in Korea, I've been studying a lot of historical Korean crafts and arts. I've been taking Minhwa painting classes, for instance. I have this big research on historical Korean fashion, and I've been making good progress on that. So I also make hanbok. So if you have questions about, you know, any of that, and my range of countries of interest is pretty broad. So pop it in the live chat. If I know something about it, I will answer. If I don't know something about it, I will answer honestly that I don't know that. It's not within my range. What is the origin of the pavan? The pavan is interesting. The pavan seems to appear out of nowhere. The pavan seems to appear out of nowhere. Some people theorize, so the pavan is a dance in the 16th century that is performed across Europe. 16th century Europe, Italy, France, Germany, England, Spain. It's performed across Europe. It's a processional dance, meaning a lot of couples dancing in a line, one couple behind the other. There's different choreographies, so there's different patterns that you would dance to specific music. In Italy, the pavans are very complex. In England, they're not. And it's generally danced to 4/4 music, or to a compound 6/8, so that means you're actually dancing over top of 2 bars of 6/8, so it's very slow and it's very stately. Some people say that the pavan evolved out of the bassa danza, or the basse danse, which is a 15th century dance form that is danced in a 6/4 meter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? It's got this wonderful swaying quality to it, and it's much more interesting for both dancing and for listening. So I don't know if I agree that the pavan evolved out of the bassa danza, or if it was just it was that music changed. I theorize that music changed, that the style of music that people were playing in the 16th century changed. There's a big move away from 6/4 time music, and that they developed a dance that would be enjoyable to that, or that could be done to that kind of music, and that was the pavan. So there's no clear answer about where the pavan comes from, but there are theories. Let's see. I'm also looking into Assisi embroidery. You mean the sort of the embroidery that is modernly done in Assisi, or extant medieval pieces from Assisi? Because we actually do have, believe it or not, Saint Francis of Assisi, at least one of his garments has been preserved, and Saint Clare of Assisi, his sort of female equivalent, his female counterpart, one of her garments has also survived from the 13th century. Pretty cool. Let's see, Richard Hill says, I enjoy Irish history, predominantly traditional Irish carpentry. Well, my knowledge of medieval Irish history and medieval Irish material culture has been expanding massively since I started collaborating with Philip from Irish medieval history. I especially know a lot about Irish clothing, medieval Irish clothing, so feel free to tap me on that if that interests you. Do you know Parth was the name of the Arjuna of Mahabharata, who was struck mortally, I think that means mortally, in the battle, and Lord Krishna guided him, and the conversation is known as the Bhagavad Gita. So I do know about the Bhagavad Gita. I have to confess that I have only recently started filling in the blanks on my Indian history, and specifically, Indian mythology and Indian religious history. So I am definitely not as knowledgeable on the Indian, on especially ancient Indian history. India, as the history of what is now India, that geography is just so rich and so complex because it's a huge area. And so many different cultures have existed there. So many different religions were born there and or grew there into their own special form. And I have to tell you, ancient Indian history is particularly complex. So it's very fascinating, but I've only recently started expanding into that area. Not because of any particular reason, but because I'm mortal and I only have a limited amount of time on this earth. So, you know, you can only get to so much in one lifetime, which is why I wish for immortality plus eternal youth, so that I can just keep learning and learning and learning. I would never get bored. Never. Yep. Yeah. So, oh yeah, Parth. Unfortunately, so the comment is that unfortunately, you know, Indian libraries were burnt by invaders. Unfortunately, that is often the story all across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Europe has had so many tragic library burnings. Africa has had so many tragic library burnings. The Middle East, I'm thinking Baghdad, the Great Library of Baghdad, and even in ancient times. Unfortunately, in ancient times, when the libraries burned, it actually preserved the clay tablets because the burning of the library baked the tablets and basically turned them into stones that would last forever. So the burning of ancient libraries from like 3,000 years ago with clay tablets, good. The burning of libraries that have paper and vellum, bad. Yeah, but yeah, it's one of those great historical tragedies, and one of the things that makes historians the saddest is the knowledge of all of the libraries that have burnt across all of human history, and all of the books that have been burnt intentionally. I'm thinking all of those Incan and Aztec and Mayan codices that were intentionally burnt by bigoted Spaniards, right? It is a tragedy of history. It really is. It makes me sad every time I think about it. India is included in that. Korea, the various invaders, you know, the Mongolians set fire to things, and the Jurchen set fire to things, and the Japanese set fire to things, records, and the Qing and the Manchus set fire to things. The Korean War burnt the whole peninsula almost to a crisp. So yeah, fire is an unfortunate constant companion in history and the destroyer of knowledge. Very sad. Let me see. There's a music book at the local half price books. They claim to have several thousand Irish traditional songs. Yeah, unfortunately, Irish traditional music is not historical. It's not medieval anyway. A lot of people like to think that just because something is so-called traditional, that it is historical. That is unfortunately just not the case. Very often, then music. Music and songs written for court or for religious ceremonies has to follow a very stringent code, a very stringent structure, and is not allowed to change until it is allowed to change. Whereas folk music, folk clothing, folk stories, they are free. They are untethered by any of that. And so they evolve much more organically and much more rapidly with time and with dispersion and with all of the changes that human creativity can bring to something like that. So Irish traditional music, most of it doesn't date back before the 18th century. And a lot of it since then has changed. If you compare, you know, the setting for an Irish song from an 18th century source and you compare it to its modern self, you're going to notice a lot of changes, and sometimes the lyrics and sometimes the music itself. Because instruments change. Instruments also evolve. Even folk instruments evolve. What is considered a folk instrument changes. So never ever take it for granted that a so-called traditional art or craft is historical. It might be. It also might not be. Yeah. Thank you, Earthworm. Appreciate that. Let me see. Oh yeah, Parth. Earlier sages used to write on leaves in Sanskrit. Yeah, a lot of those early writing writing materials were highly biodegradable. Unfortunately, yeah. Oh yeah, there was a cultural exchange between Korea and India. Absolutely, there was a cultural exchange between Persia and India. There was a cultural exchange Persia and Korea. There was a cultural exchange between ancient Rome and Korea. Believe it or not, there are ancient Roman glassware, 5th and 6th century glassware, glasses that were blown in Rome, in the Mediterranean, in the European part of Mediterranean, in that era, in the 5th and 6th centuries. How cool is that? I just love finding all of those ancient connections that dispel the myth of pre-modern culture being local and stagnant and isolated and insular. I just love every bit of evidence we find that completely blows that ridiculous myth away. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. King Kim Suro married Queen Ayodhya. Do you know when, I am actually not familiar with King Suro, but there's multiple kingdoms across the Korean Peninsula throughout the last 2,000 years. So do you know roughly when that is? There were lots of Mongolian queens in the Goryeo dynasty in Korea. Yeah, trade, exactly. Trade is the way that culture travels, right? And culture traveling is key to innovation because new ideas are brought in and they're blended with local ideas and local technologies, and they allow people to take things to the next level, whether that's an art or a craft or a scientific technology or a combination of all three, right? That trade is so essential to the development of human civilization. It really is. Ah, okay. Do you know which was that in Goguryeo? Because Korea in 48 AD, Korea is not one kingdom, right? That is not even necessarily the Three Kingdoms era. That's before the Three Kingdoms era. So you've got a bunch of different kingdoms on the Korean Peninsula at that point, and actually the Korean realm of influence at that point goes up into what is now Manchuria. So you're talking like Balhae, right, up into China. So there isn't one kingdom in Korea, just like there wasn't one kingdom in India in that era. Even though the Korean Peninsula is much smaller, there were still lots of local kingdoms. And a lot of the Korean islands in that era were independent polities, were independent kingdoms as well. Yep. Richard Hill, love that. Thank you for that compliment. Richard Hill, I don't know if I'm an absolute joy to sit and have tea with. I'm an acquired taste. I'll be frank, I'm an acquired taste. Some people love me, other people loathe me, and there isn't much in between. So, if the interpersonal chemistry is right, then you might love me. I'm not gonna lie. There's no point in pretending otherwise. But I do love sitting and having tea with people, and I am not snobbish at all. If I am ever in your local area and I post about it and you all are there, reach out to me and I will happily meet up for tea and a conversation. I love meeting people all across the world, and I travel a lot, which is why I have a Travels with the Creative Contessa channel. I travel a lot. We are currently here kind of on a long-term visit, couple of month visit to Daegu, South Korea, which we're hoping will eventually translate into living in Daegu, South Korea, but at the moment we're just tourists. Of the last 12 years, I've spent 9 of them in Korea. I've traveled all over Asia. I lived in Europe for 12 years. I lived and worked in Europe for 12 years. I love going out and seeing the world and meeting new people and seeing what life is like in other places and other histories. The best way to learn about another culture's history or another nation's history is to go there and see it for yourself. So we just got back from Chiang Mai, from Thailand, Chiang Mai and Bangkok. And, I love going to the museums there and learning about a completely different kind of history than the history that is here in Korea, than the history that is in Europe that is in the US than in the Americas, right? There's the way that human civilization develops so differently in these places fascinates me. Yeah. Yeah, Ayutthaya. Maestro, I want, your hat was called. Oh, Eric. Okay. Ayutta, yeah, so I would imagine, so, transcriptions are always tricky because there are different transcribing something from one alphabet or one writing system in one language to another writing system in another language can be very tricky, right? Very tricky indeed. Um, The name of the queen was Suriratna. That's a beautiful name, Suriratna. What a beautiful name. I'm a linguist originally, for those who don't know. I was a professional translator in the life before large language learning models and generative AI. The machines ate my career. So I started to tap into my other massive skill set, which is history, the knowledge of history, and the knowledge of historical crafts, and sharing that with people. And the best way to do that these days is through social media. So that's hence the Creative Contessa was born, and then the travels with the Creative Contessa was born, since I also travel a lot. But that means that I love languages. I love languages. I love the sounds of words. I love the melodious nature of different languages, and I especially love names and the beauty of names in different cultures. No, Parth, the whole point of the live stream is to be talkative. I forgot to ask again. Oh, Eric, you're talking about my kerchief? You mean the white hat I usually wear? Is that what you meant? The white cap that I usually wear? It's called a kerchief or a couvre-chef in 15th century English. We think, anyway. Yep. Oh, his King Suro's Hillgrave is in Gimhae. We should visit. It looks nice. Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, so Eric, it's called a kerchief. Yep. Like handkerchief, but without the hand part. Yeah, I meant to bring it. I thought I brought it because I was going to just demonstrate putting it on for you all, but I don't think I did grab it, alas. Yep. Oh, King Suro's Hillgrave. I wonder, Ryan, do you have any knowledge on where his queen's grave is? It would definitely be interesting to go and visit an Indian queen's grave here in South Korea. That would be super cool. Yeah, how different it would have been for her. This climate versus India, so very different. Different flora and fauna, very different foodstuffs. And at that point, there was no tea here. Tea had not arrived here in Korea yet. They might have imported it, but there isn't much evidence of that. Yeah, in India, cotton textiles are very famous, best for summers. Indeed, India is so known for its cotton textiles that we have words in English for cotton that come from, shit. Sorry, excuse my language. Not Hindi. Sanskrit. Sanskrit. Sanskrit, or that are based on the names of the Indian cities from which those fabrics come. Right, so yeah, it's even in the Middle Ages, India was known for its cotton. Of course, in the Middle Ages in Europe, India, the geographic region of India was very different from the modern. Know that cotton came from India, and you all should absolutely check out. I think it's Pliny the Elder's De Re Natura, but it might have been Herodotus too. He's Herodotus actually. His depiction of the cotton bush is a tree with little sheepies on it growing out of the branches, because that was their understanding of cotton wool, is this fuzzy white thing, they knew, travelers told them that it grew on a bush, that it grew on a tree, And so the way they depicted it was little sheepies growing from the tree. It's so cute. It's totally adorable. Totally adorable. And absolutely something that would be worthy of Lewis Carroll and his Wonderland. If you ever find your way to Nashville, Tennessee, I'll take you up on that. Ooh, a theology major. But I thoroughly enjoy history. The two complement each other. Oh yeah, you read and speak Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, religion and history, history consists of large parts religion. Just there is no way to understand most periods of history without understanding the religious practices that informed them or that were informed by them. People who try to do medieval living history, but they cut out all the religious stuff, you're actually leaving out like 60% of the medieval experience and the medieval mindset. And not just Europe, not just Christian. Right? So, absolutely. Understanding the history of religion is key to understanding the history of humanity. And, a good theologian will have a good grasp of both. I absolutely believe. Oh, Edward, it was lovely to see you again. It's been a while. Are you doing some embroidery? Oh, okay, yes. So what am I doing? I am doing repairs. This is... I've got to be, whatever. No project is worth doing unless you bleed on it. Okay, this is a camicia. This is an 15th century Italian undershirt, an undergarment. This one is for women. Men also wear them. It's made of, in this case, linen, white linen, undyed, because this is the layer that gets laundered. The overgarments don't need to be washed because this is the layer that gets washed. So, I'm now actually doing repairs on the inside because they tore at the corners. And so I'm putting these reinforcing bands on the inside. So not embroidery, just pragmatic old repair work, but very essential repair work. I made this one in 2013 and it's still going pretty strong. So you can tell that the quality of linen back then was much better than the quality of linen that's generally available now because I made this in 2013 and it still hasn't started to wear out yet. Whereas kamite smocks that I've made more recently of more recent linen I've already had to trash them or upcycle them into something else smaller because the linen wore away in so many spots. Quality of materials is a big issue these days. Yeah. Mithu says, yes, we have a similar one, chamise, in our culture. Oh, Mithu, are you also, your name tells me India, but I apologize if that is incorrect. Are you also speaking of traditional Indian clothing? Yeah, it absolutely, historically, up until everywhere in the world, it seems, where it isn't tropical, or where they actually wear clothes instead of don't wear clothes. Historically, until the 20th century, everyone seems to have had some kind of skin undergarment layer that is worn against your skin. That's the layer that gets laundered. The overgarments don't. But in the 20th century, Western fashion, basically the sewing machine and Western fashion changes all that, especially in the 1920s when they move away from all the heavy layers and they want a more minimalist approach to clothing. Then they actually start lining dresses in the West, and decreasingly do you actually need a separate undergarment, plus clothing is then made to be washed in a washing machine instead of not being washable at all because no one actually wants to send their clothing for professional laundering anymore. So we moved away from that linen undergarment. But I will tell you, I very often still wear a linen undergarment if I'm wearing dress or skirt, because it does help keep my overgarments cleaner and prevents, things like sweat stains from appearing on my overgarments. And I can launder the hell out of this undyed linen undergarment, whereas I definitely don't want to do that to, say, my silk dress. So yeah, we should go back to it. It's a practice we should take back up again in the West. Oh, you're from West Bengal. Yeah, very cool. What's the weather like right there right now? I know it's, let me see, you're probably right about equator level now. You're probably right about at the hottest time of year for you, I'm assuming. if not maybe just past it. Yeah, Kolkata, very cool, very cool. I have not spent much time in India. I want to go and spend more time there. I want to get outside of the cities though. I'm claustrophobic, and large crowds of humans absolutely trigger my claustrophobia. So I want to get out into the countryside, into the smaller villages, into the green areas where the air is fresher, where it's quieter. And I really want to go and experience the very local cuisine. I wanted to stay with actual families to see what real life is like, not plastified tourist life. Travel for me, I mean, sometimes it's nice to go and stay in a 5-star hotel. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that's not nice. But sometimes, for me, travel is about experiencing other places for real, not just the beautified version of other places. So, and I love Indian food. Love Indian food. I've never met an Indian dish I didn't like. Southern Indian food, Northern Indian food. I've never met an Indian dish I didn't like. Some of them have been so spicy that I could only eat a couple of bites, but it was tasty until I got to the point where I wanted to carve my mouth out. So yeah, very excited to experience, the local regional experiences, the beautiful art, the crafts, the variety of clothing, of local clothing, of local cuisine, of markets and the rhythms of life. Yeah. Yeah, the country. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances actually who live in India, and my general impression is that the countryside is where it's at. So that's definitely on my list of places to hit. It's just a question of when and how. Our lives have been kind of chaotic these last many years. I'm hoping we'll eventually arrive at a situation where we can plan more things like that more readily. Yeah. So is anyone out there working on any of their own handcrafts? And by the way, if you're just joining, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am a medieval living historian. I enjoy exploring history and learning and researching about it so that I can recreate aspects of it, such as the food, the crafts, the dances, the music, the games, the way people interacted, the fashion, and experience history in a more first-hand way, and specifically to understand how people live their daily lives. And I love sharing my research and knowledge in this venue. Today I'm just working on repairs on a garment, an undergarment, a kamecha. If you're interested in learning about history in this manner, then please double tap that screen and consider subscribing. Parth, thank you for joining. I hope to see you again. Okay, almost done with this patch. I am just patching this kamecha. Kamecha is the 15th century Italian word, especially in Florence, for shirt. But I would say it would be more accurately translated now into English as an undershirt, because this garment, if you were wearing this garment, you would have been considered just this garment. You would have been considered naked, even though you weren't naked, but you would have been viewed as being naked. So this was something that was worn under your other clothing, not on its own out and about, which is fascinating because the amount of fabric that is contained by this garment is more fabric than most sundresses. Or pretty much any sundress, really. And yet in the Middle Ages, you would have been considered naked had you been wearing just this. It covers everything. Nothing shows, and yet still you would have been viewed as being naked if you were wearing just your kamecha or your chemise, as they're called in French, or your smoka, as they were called in English, or your sherta was another English word for this layer. Okay. I'm almost done with this repair. I think think I've got it all, dear, battened down, except I messed up there. I'll have to go and fix that. That's fine. Just gonna do, okay, so the patch is on. And you can tell there's a difference in the linen. So the one thing about undyed linen is still bleached usually. And so you see the difference in the white? That's not because this is dirty or aged. This is just a more natural level of bleaching. Whereas this was bleached into what's now called optic white. Difference, right? Okay, so let me just bury my needle. Don't do what it is I'm about to do because shouldn't do this. Oh wait, there's a couple of spots I'm going to just quilt this down a little bit. So there's a spot that's kind of just worn out. And what I'm going to do there is actually take my needle and thread and bring it up there, and I'm going to do some darning. I'm actually going to quilt the patch to the front where it's a little thin to reinforce that spot by using thread to basically glue the two layers together. And that will prevent further wear from happening to the top and sort of transfer the wear and tear onto the patch beneath. Right, so that will prevent it from becoming threadbare there. Ah, what a beautiful day here. So beautiful here in Daegu, South Korea. Oh, Tinky Pixie, it's been a while. Good to see you again. I'm just sitting here working on a medieval garment, a kamicha. I'm working on repairs. I have been working on a lot of new garments also, everyone. I've been working on what some of you might call the quintessential medieval princess dress, the Burgundian gown as it's known in some costuming circles. This is the dress that the so-called princesses with the pointy hats wear, that usually has a big belt around the waist. That style of gown, I've got almost done. I've been fighting with the attachable velvet collar. The dress itself is basically done. I just need to attach the lacing rings, but I've been fighting with the collar. The attachable silk velvet collar, silk velvet, it's the bane of my existence. I hate sewing velvet so much. It is such an annoying fabric to sew because it moves, it migrates, it is sentient. And I have to say, velvet is maliciously sentient. Velvet is evil. It is possessed by demons. Right? And I don't even believe in that, and yet I believe that this velvet is possessed by demons. So I've been fighting a lot with the silk velvet collar that will go onto it. I've also started repatterning kirtles. The kirtle are the dresses that go underneath of the overgown. The kirtle would go over top of this and then underneath the overgown, and that's a fitted, very fitted gown that also provides bust support. I need to make new ones. Mine are wearing out. So I unfortunately don't have the patterns anymore, so I've started repatterning a kirtle to go under that. I'd like to have that done in time. I've got a new kamicha for Ryan, so the male version of this cut out and ready to be sewn up. I've got a lot of projects on the plate right now. And tomorrow, for those who are interested in medieval food, we're going to be doing a medieval cooking chat where we are going to talk about 16th century Transylvanian food. Transylvania, of Dracula fame, Vlad the Impaler. There's a 16th century cookbook that was written for a Transylvanian prince, and it contains hundreds of recipes and actual menus. And one of my followers and friends has recently cooked a medieval feast with recipes from this cookbook, and it involved doing a lot of reading and a lot of research. And so we're going to talk about her learnings from this cookbook. We're going to talk about the characteristics of the food contained in this compendium, compare it to contemporary Western European food, and just have a generally good old time. So if you are interested in medieval cuisine up until the end of the 16th century, then please join in that live stream tomorrow. That will be, what time? That will be, I think it is 9 a.m. Seoul Standard Time, so GMZ +9, and that will be there for on Monday, 8 p.m. the globe in that spectrum. Should be a really interesting discussion about medieval food. I will be dressed in medieval attire for that. So come prepared with your medieval food questions, and we will best answer them as best we can. I also recently discovered a 17th century Korean cookbook. 2 of them. 2 recipe collections from 17th century Korea. Very interesting stuff. So I'm going to be doing, I'll be talking about, I'm going to be trying actually some of the recipes from it. There's this beautiful flower blossom rice pancake recipe. Her version of it is very different from the modern versions, which I've also made. So I'm very excited to actually try my hand at her version and see what we come up with. So that will be on one of my live medieval cooking parties where we do actually demonstrate and go through the recipe together and make the dish. Vlad's garlic-laden goulash. What? Yeah, lots of garlic in the cooking for certain. Yep, exciting for Transylvania. Yeah. Let me see. I spent 6 months living with the Amish in Kentucky, and while I spent most of my time working outside, I learned a lot about sewing from the women of the house I was staying with. Oh yeah, the Amish communities are very interesting. I grew up in Amish country in Delaware, so I grew up surrounded by Amish people. Yeah, Richard. I bet those toxic masculinity Amish men thought you were being girly in their low middle German. Yeah. So just so you know, the Amish do not speak Dutch; they speak German. Dutch is a corruption of the word Deutsch, which means German. So the Amish actually speak generally an 18th or 19th century dialect of Low German. So sometimes it's mutually intelligible with modern High German, and sometimes it's not. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Well, I have finished up here. Let me show you the finished patch. There on that side, and then another one on this side. And this is how it looks on the outside, so you can't even tell it's there. Right? You would hardly know that there was a massive rip all the way to here, like a ripped open, and now it's all back together again, ready for another 13 years of wear and tear. Okay, any final questions, everyone, before we part company for the day? We'll be back on tomorrow to talk about 16th century Transylvanian food and its cousins in Western Europe. Donateres apele a estrada. Gracias. Okay, everyone. If you have any final questions, before we part ways, I'd like to thank my patrons and my channel members and my Facebook subscribers for supporting my medieval living history work, and specifically my content creation work, to share all of that research with you all. If you would like to support my work in that way, consider becoming a patron or a channel member or a subscriber. The best of those options, the one that gets me the most of your money, is actually a patron on Patreon, because YouTube takes 30% to 60% cut, depending. That also gets you a host of extra content. It gets you extra videos, full-length tutorials, early release of videos, uncut footage so you can see how the magic happens, including our bullshitting behind the scenes. Also, access to my Creative Contessa Discord server, where we share a large variety of information, resources, new research. It's where I share a lot of extra things with my community. And I'd also like to thank those of you who gave me gifts today and who super chatted. I really appreciate all the forms of financial support, because frankly, YouTube advertising revenue is a drop in the bucket, sadly. Where am I from? Originally, I am from the great state of Delaware in the United States, but I haven't lived in the US very much in the last 24 years. Of the last 24 years, I've lived 3 of them in the US. So yeah, these days I mostly consider myself a citizen of the world. Currently in Daegu, South Korea, which maybe you can tell from the view up here. Yeah. Yep. Oh, sorry, we're about to part ways. You'll have to watch the recordings, also on Travels with the Creative Contessa. Okay, everyone, if you had any questions and I didn't answer them, pop them in the comments once the video posts, and I will see them and answer them. Otherwise, until next time, may your adventures in history be creative. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone.